When was your last I gotta get the heck out of here moment? It was years ago, when I was in 4th grade. My parents used to get into fights all the time, especially when my dad was drinking. They'd start yelling and that would turn into actual fist fights. At this time we were living in a small trailer, and the room I shared with all 3 of my siblings was at one end of the trailer, near the back door. So my dad comes home drunk. Mom is pee and starts yelling and it escalates from there. Being in a small trailer, everything sounds so close and terrifying. And as the oldest of 4, I felt the need to protect my siblings, but I didn't know what to do. After a while my mom starts screaming my name at the top of her lungs and I can still hear my dad screaming too. And I knew that I needed to get myself and my siblings out of there ASAP. I ushered them out of the room, down the hallway, and out the back door and told them to head to our aunt's place, who lived a few trailers down. My mom was still screaming for me and all I knew to do was yell, "I got them out mom," we're leaving, before also going out the back to my aunt's. I don't recall ever being that scared. Cops came. They both went to jail and were both out in a couple days and acted like nothing ever happened. A few years ago I brought the incident up to my mom. I told her that I thought she was screaming at me to get my siblings out of the house and that's why I had. She told me she was screaming my name cause she was scared and wanted help and didn't know who else to call for. I felt so bad cause I didn't help her, but there's not really much I could have done. I worked in a factory that made large plastic items via filling molds with powder and sending into a giant industrial oven that heated to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. At the end of the week I was cleaning said oven and my boss, not knowing I was inside, turned it on. At the sound of hydraulic doors closing I dove out of the oven just as they closed and avoided free cremation. I both got the heck out of that oven and that company pretty quick. Did you report it? Obvious OSHA safety violation. No safety interlocks. On the NYC subway I watched a grown man pull his pants down and use the support rod in the middle of the train as leverage to take a wicked steamy dump while making aggressive eye contact with me and a few other passengers. This one is funny but also WTF. In the fall I was walking down a trail in the woods during the middle of the day. A raccoon was sitting in the middle of the trail, facing us, sitting on its butt, head kind of lowered, bugs buzzing all around it. It didn't move at all. It just stared at us. We decided to turn around. I don't know what rabies looks like, but that's not how I want to find out. I gave my ex a ride to his court hearing for hitting my daughter. I pointed out to him inside that there was a sign that said no cell phones and that I would run our phones out to the car, and she right back. I felt like my heart was going to break my sternum and I had tunnel vision as I called my sister and told her I needed her and her husband to come with their pickup truck to my house right now because I had a small window to get as much of my daughters and my possessions out of my house before he was released from court. Just as we were wrapping up I saw him running down the street like Usain Bolt right for me. I yelled for them to drop what they had and get in the truck and go. Just as I close my car door he runs up and tries to smash it open. I fumbled with my keys to get the engine started. He then stands in front of my car blocking my path. I dismissed my burning desire to run him over and threw it in reverse and smashed the gas pedal down the block to the next street. I'd like to say things got better after that, but that was just the beginning of the worst year of my life. Now I'm past all of that and living a better life. Whoa, that takes guts. I hope you're doing better now. I was at a marketing recruitment presentation in college and this guy started talking about how we would be able to go to Disneyland and buy Ferraris if we just signed up to his exclusive elite program. We just had to make a small down payment right there in the auditorium, and we shouldn't talk about it with friends or family because haters online had damaged the company's reputation. It was Amway, and the guy was Charlie D'Urso. It says here the IRS has an open investigation on the company. Haters. I'd lived in the same crap neighborhood for a couple years and was living further into the worst of it at a weekly rent place. In prior years my car had been broken into. The house's garage had been broken into. I had some stuff stolen. I'd heard gunshots, but I'd never seen anything all that bad. At the weekly rental, we heard a dude shot dead in the lot next door. The police came knocking to interview neighbors, and everyone else had lived there longer and refused to open the door in case of potential gang retaliation. It was a gang dispute according to later newspaper reports. but in that area it was usually safe to say anything involving guns was gang related. That was the freaking end of that. I found a place far enough outside the city that rent was still cheap, dealt with the long commute, and enjoyed the country. My second from last job. The company owners are arrogant buttholes who think workers are scum. The management are always blaming the workers for their mistakes and the workers themselves were always arguing and bickering amongst themselves. The place was so toxic for people like me who just wanted to do a day's work without all the drama. I work where I work. Was in New Orleans interviewing for a job that required driving a company vehicle 10 hours a day that had valuable specialty equipment. Interview is going great and we get to the part about pay. Guy goes, "We can offer you 10 an hour." A big smile came over my face and I leaned over to shake his hand. He thought I was agreeing. I was telling him bye. Popeyes pays around 15 an hour here. Fast forward 3 months. That guy can't figure out why every driver he hires steals the equipment. I pulled into a gas station to fill up my car at 4 AM on the way to work. The station was well lit and actually pretty busy, so I didn't feel unsafe. I pulled up next to a pump, go out, and just when I put the nozzle in I heard someone trying to get my attention. I turned and it was a guy who had been leaning against the wall of the station when I pulled in. There was a van nearby him. He asked if I could call his girlfriend to come pick him up. I called one number, voicemail box full. He gave me a second number, mailbox also full. Then he asked if I had jumper cable and if I could give me a jump. I agreed, thinking the van he was nearby was his vehicle. Then, after I agree, he tells me the story of how he got there. According to him, his car had broken down at another gas station up the street. He said it was closed so he couldn't get any help. So he borrowed a bike from someone and rode it down to this gas station. Then he went into the gas station to leave the bike there. As soon as he started walking away, my brain started racing and pointing out all the things that didn't add up about this story. First, all I could imagine in those voicemail boxes were a bunch of people going, "Your boyfriend is stuck at the gas station." Then, I thought about how in the heck would he legitimately borrow a bike from someone at a closed gas station in the middle of the night and the middle of winter. At that point, I decided it was time to get the frick out of there. Thankfully, I hadn't pumped any gas yet, so I quickly put it back on the pump, got into my car, and tore out of there. I actually felt a little bad because what if he actually needed help? But then I reminded myself about him borrowing a bike in that situation, how he was trying to get me to a dark, secluded secondary location. This dude was absolutely trying to murder me. Never go to the secondary location. My friend's crazy drunk cousin grabbed a circular saw in attempt to kill me because he thought I said something bad about his aunt. I left. What the heck? I was visiting London and just got out of sports bar by myself at 3 AM. Drunk as crap, I decide to walk from the bar, near Leicester Square, to my hotel near King's Cross. Despite not knowing exactly where I am or how to get to the hotel, I start walking in a direction and within a minute I'm walking down a rather wide shopping street when I see 2 bald guys coming the other way, both pretty much built brick shit houses, and looking like they want to start crap. They hadn't spotted me yet, but one guy suddenly walks to the side of the street and just flat out punches the steel grate in front of a shop entrance as hard as he can. I pretty much did a straight 180, double timed it back to the bar, and asked the nice bouncers to get me a cab. Cab drops me off in front of the hotel and I go to bed without getting the crap kicked out of me first. Probably a good idea. It's maybe a 40-minute walk or so, but once you're past Fitzrovia THC and by Euston, it gets very quiet at night with not many people around. I go to school in Poughkeepsie. One time my friends and I were walking along some train tracks by the river on a foggy night. Not smart. We could barely see 5 feet ahead, but we weren't afraid because it was a popular hangout spot. All of a sudden we hear loud barking and a freaking sea kid lunges out of the fog at us, barking like a dog. The fog around him cleared up and we could see more druggies lying under some leaves by the side of the tracks, watching us and laughing. Never ran so fast or came so close to crapping myself in my life. Crazy guy on the LRT train C-train taking a stone out of his mouth and saying he killed a guy with it, but it was self-defense so it's okay, right? Yeah, that was peak I gotta get the heck out of here for me. Plus he smelled like puke. That didn't help either. Minor update, it was Calgary, not Edmonton. If a dude pulls a stone out of his mouth and says he killed someone with it, you'd better take that at face value. Happened a few hours ago. Was in the park with my younger brother just playing football, having nice time. Suddenly I see a man looking over in our direction. However, I can't be too sure because I don't have my glasses and I don't want to scare myself for no reason. He's carrying an orange bag so it's easy to see him. I ignore him and brother and I start walking around randomly, not following the path, backtracking, just not walking logically if that makes sense, kicking the ball to each other. The last time I went to this park on the 1st, a man of the same build ethnicity followed me so I felt myself getting paranoid. This man kept his distance, but for instance we went into the basketball area and he would come to the entrance and lean against the gate just watching us. He could go behind the trees, it was clear he knew his way around this park, and follow us, which I wouldn't notice if it wasn't for his bag. I wanted to confront him but I was with my younger brother and didn't want to cause trouble. I wasn't really scared but more angry and frustrated. The man suddenly starts getting braver and walking faster towards us, and so we decide to quickly run home even though we were only out for 15 minutes. I'd give the non-emergency line a call. The cops doing a quick drive walk by might be enough to scare him off. Grabbing some Waffle House in a not so good part of town around 2 AM after work. Dude whipped out a gun and was screaming at the chick he was with. Definitely my most gotta get the frick out of here moment. A few years later got a job as a 911 caretaker. Same Waffle House got shot up, so there is that. This was like 5 years ago. I was 24 years old, got way too drunk at my local bar and ended up going back to this guy's apartment. It was decorated by somebody's grandmother for sure. There were candelabras everywhere. He lit all of them, then sat me on the couch and proceeded to go through all of these old family photo albums, specifically looking at pictures of his siblings and cousins as children. No joke, he was getting so hard that I could see the album start moving up and down. Then he asked me if I had any pictures of when I was a child or my siblings when they were children. Never sobered up so fast and booked it right the F out of there, because I got messages about drunk driving. This was in NYC. I walked 16 blocks through East Harlem and never felt so safe in my life. Dang, what a weirdo. Also frickin' Reddit man. People getting upset at you for drunk driving when nowhere in your post does it mention driving home. SMH. I hit a tricky spot because the house that I was living in was being sold off by the owners. I wasn't able to find a place I could afford in time, and ended up having to go live with my dad. My dad had always been a little cagey about describing his living situation. I understood he was living in a very poor area because it was all he could afford at the time, but I wasn't prepared for the heck hole he'd stubbornly insisted on trying to make something of. There's no heating system. All heat came from a dangerously clogged fireplace that triggered my asthma like crazy. There's no running water to anywhere in the house, just the main and the basement. That means any water for cooking, cleaning, hygiene, or even just to flush the toilet needed to be carried by bucket up at least one flight of stairs if not two. No electricity either until I paid off the overdue bills. That meant until I got that figured out, there were no lights, no appliances, nothing. Phone charging was done by risking leaving them in my dad's running car. If I wanted anything more than that, I had to bike 2 miles away to a better part of the city to use the Wi-Fi and electricity at Starbucks to charge everything, including power banks for nighttime use. Holes in the walls, holes in the ceiling, and by holes I mean I could look down and see the living room through the upstairs linen closet floor. Heat pretty much was constantly escaping the house even when we got electric heaters for our rooms. It also extended to the roof, so there was constant water damage to my dad's room. On top of all this, my dad took in an abusive hoarder that proceeded to fill his house with garbage. My dad, being overly empathetic and possibly afraid of being alone, refused to kick him out. I lasted 3 or 4 months before finally shipping the heck out to another relative in a completely different part of the state. It sucked because it meant leaving behind everything familiar to me. But honestly, my life improved greatly once I got a new living situation and job figured out up here. I don't regret leaving. I shudder to think about having to try to spend another winter there. My dad has since found better work and has his own apartment, so I'm grateful he got out of that heck hole and left the abusive hoarder far behind. I just cannot fathom being desperate enough to live without accessible running water. His old living situation sounded exhausting to think about, the coordination required for mundane tasks. The guy that I met, college educated, handsome, retro digs in Long Beach car, articulate, funny, packed a picnic for our blind date complete with cloth napkins, went back to his place and the kitchen was a hoarder's dream. At least 6 full sets of dishes, dirty, sitting in neatly stacked piles everywhere, pots and pans, the same thing. Hundreds of dollars worth of iron cookware stacked on the floor, rusting. Instead of washing dishes he would buy more. Nope, the frick out. When I first moved to where I'm living now, it's across the river from a college town city with a main street that is littered with restaurants and bars. So one night a couple friends and I went out and decided to bar hop. Nothing crazy, just wanted to check out the different places. Walked into one hole in the wall joint with only a handful of people in there. Everybody's head turned and looked at us like we were from another planet. Weird vibe immediately. Bartender approaches slowly, asking how we're doing and what he can get us. We order our round of drinks. Bartender very slowly says, "Is that all again?" Weird vibe, but whatever. Random guy, later found out to be the owner, comes and sits next to us and starts chatting us up. Where we're from, what we're doing in the area, if we're cool. Lots of weird conversation starters. At this point, we want out but our drinks haven't come back yet. So we get our drinks and try to keep to ourselves. Guy keeps asking if he can get us anything at all, off the menu. It's at this point I realize that the 2 women at the other end are doing coke off the bar. There's also now 2 large men standing against the wall right behind us, just grilling us. Not wanting to make a scene, we all shared a "let's get the frick outta here" look. Talked amongst ourselves for a minute, finished our drinks as fast as possible, paid and left. The owner was trying to talk to us the entire time we're paying and making our way to the door, trying to keep us there as the 2 large men slowly close in. We got the frick out and said nothing until we hit the other side of the street. The frick, what a shady place. Glad you guys made it out alright. My husband came home from a business trip early yesterday and failed to mention it to me. I heard someone jiggling the doorknob and sprinted out the back door. Not getting murdered in my own house. I like your style. Most people have a "who the frick is entering my house" mentality, but the "no questions asked whelp. Time for me to get the frick out of my house" is probably more effective for survival. Oh boy, I have another one. My ex-best friend convinced me to go to a concert with her. I told her I couldn't because I had a long drive the next morning and didn't want to waste gas or go to bed too late, and she said it was fine. She would drive and would get me home right after the concert. Went to the concert. It was fine. I was ready to go home, but she told me she wanted to go to an after party with the band because her crush would be there. I agreed because she really wanted to get with this guy. The chances of it happening seemed high, and I wanted her to be happy. Turns out the after party was at a decent hotel. Underage kids were straight up walking in with handles of alcohol, and it was really obvious what was going on. The receptionist was eyeing everyone, but nobody gave a frick. My friend and I got to the room and we were the only girls there. Around 40 drunk college guys and 2 girls, both under 110 pounds. I'd never experienced being looked at like a juicy steak until that moment. I told her we had to go, but she was hellbent on staying with her crush. I couldn't convince her, so I called my mom. The most awkward phone conversation of my life, and had her pick me up. Turns out the receptionist called the cops soon after I left and the party got broken up. I think some people got charged. So I called my mom. The most awkward phone conversation of my life, and had her pick me up. Thank you for the reminder to reiterate to my son, often, that if he's ever in some crap, he can call me and I can pick him up. I had been renting a house from my sister. I paid my bills every month precisely on time for 6 years. No delays, no mispayments, etc. About 6 months ago my sister lost her job. She decided to drink her, not insignificant, savings away and not look for a job, and then when things got tight she started using my rent check to pay her rent instead of the mortgage on the house I was living in. I didn't discover any of this until a letter showed up one day from some attorney saying pay up or we foreclose in 30 days. Fortunately things dragged out long enough for me to be able to afford to move, but that was the last straw. I had to get away from family. This was not the first time I had been forced to rely on them and gotten screwed, but it is definitely the last. When my now ex-husband called to me to tell me the reason why he was late for dinner was because he was arrested for masturbating in public, I got out. I'm too old for that crap. Stupidly staying in the ring when asked by a young, around 25, semi-pro boxer if I wanted to do a few rounds sparring with him. I'd just done about 5 rounds light with my slightly overweight, unfit mate. He was very good about it and wasn't a dong, but after 2 rounds I had those words in my head. A bit of backstory, a friend of mine borrowed few hundreds from me. After a month, she asked me to meet her at the ATM. I thought she wanted to pay me there and then. Instead, she asked me to get inside of her car, which I did because it didn't seem shady at first and she was a close friend. During the ride, she said she wanted to bring me into a meeting and pay me there. I quickly surmised that it was probably MLM and the money borrowed was her capital and her act of paying me was for the audience and she was probably intending to recruit me. After the car stopped, I noped out and walked back 3 km to my uni. She tried to take you to her secondary location. Probably walking in Gastown, in Vancouver, BC, my mom and I were looking for her sister, missing, homeless. That old Tez life. Dude in his 30s or so walks up to us, dressed normally, sort of business casual, and we look up and are about to say hi, when he covers his eyes, and starts counting down really slowly and drawn out. Nope. Big ole nope. We backed up and he followed, eyes still covered. He got to 4 or 5 and my mom just grabbed my arm and yanked me away towards people. The downtown east side of Vancouver is something else. A really tight-knit family of homeless, mentally ill, possible drug-using men and women. Men are by choice, but not all. My nana used to live in a sort of hotel there, so I know it well, but that rattled me. A company I was working at got bought out by another company. They tried to make us sign agreements that we wouldn't work in the industry for 2 years after working for our company. So like, I'm not allowed to have a job in my field for 2 years if they lay me off. A bunch of us refused to sign it but nothing happened. Then people in management started getting moved around, and they put someone in charge of me who was really incompetent. When a big company buys a small company with a lot of name recognition, I can see the writing on the wall. I got another job and got the heck out of there. Such agreements are often unenforceable, especially for rank and file employees. Courts take a dim view of denying someone an income. I remember taking my first ever dab with people I didn't know, other than my one friend. I took the largest rip ever and felt like I was going to die. I started hyperventilating while the driver was driving super fast on the highway, probably 80-85 miles per hour. I made him pull over and let me out, where my friend and I made it to a side street and called our other friend to pick us up. The 3 friends who were in the car got into a huge car wreck the same night and the passenger was killed. I've never known people to dab in a car. That's the last place I'd ever take a giant booger. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.